Hello everyone, you're watching Matrix Live, the show to tell you what's happening in Matrix, the open protocol for your secure decentralized communications. And today my guests are Eric Migicovsky and Brad Murray. I hope I didn't butcher your name.
Got it.
All right. So the two of you are building Beeper, and Beeper is an all-in-one messenger,
A universal messenger. Exactly.
universal messenger. So how would you describe Beeper?
Well, I would describe it in the path that we took to get there. If you look at messaging today, there are 15 to 20 different chat networks, and each country uses a slightly different one. Each person may have a different set of networks that they use to communicate. I looked down at my phone one day and I saw that I had 5 to 10 different chat apps that all did kind of the same thing. And I wanted to fix that. I wanted to have one app that I could just type in anyone's name and immediately start chatting with them without having to think, which network are they on? That was the kind of the core reason why we started working on it. But naturally, the story is very intertwined with Matrix because it's only made possible because of Matrix. I started working on this 2 or 3 years ago now. Um, by contacting another very well-known character in the Matrix world. His name is Talir, and we started. Well, he had been building all of these bridges that allowed Matrix to connect to various services, and I like that. I thought it was, the solution to this problem that I've been seeking for so long, probably since Trillion, if you remember that one, or Adium.
Oh, that's old. Yes.
So we wanted to be able to unify all of your messaging into a single inbox.
And that's how Beeper was born.
That was it. That was the kind of original problem that we set out to solve. But I think what we've uncovered in this in the work that we've been doing is that it's not just about unifying the inbox. That's almost just the first step. The next step is how do you prioritize and make the most important conversations more special? Like if you look at your inboxes across all of these different chat apps today, they're kind of cluttered. You've got personal messages next to group chats, next to transactional messages like two-factor authentication codes and receipts and shipping, you know, tracking numbers and all this crap, really. So for us, the first step was unifying. And the second step now, the one that we're kind of working on in the next phase of Beeper, is how do we help people prioritize the most important messages?
All right. And can we see Beeper in practice so people can have a better idea of how
Yeah.
it looks like?
Do you want me to do a little demo now? Happy to.
Yes, please.
So let me share my screen. Okay, so this is Beeper. If it looks familiar, it's because it is an element fork, and so many of you will see some of the many element features that y'all have made. Um, we've added our own skin to it and made really deep modifications that make Beeper work great for that make kind of like are focused on the various bridges that we've created. So this is kind of where the most of the magic happens. It's similar to the integration manager, except custom built for our application. Um, we've hard coded in all the bridges that we support. One of the important things to note is that, you know, the uh, the Docker Matrix Ansible project was the first thing that we used back in the day for setting up Beeper instances. It was great. It was a really good first step to getting it all set up, but it wasn't perfect for everyone. Like some people who wanted to use bridges just didn't have the ability to run their own home server. So that's why we built kind of Beeper as an all-in-one solution. So when you start using Beeper, you do not need to have your own home server. You do not need to know how to set any of that up. You can just come in, get an account, and immediately start using all the bridges. Um, the hardest part about building Beeper was building all of the bridges. Uh, when we started working on this, there was the Telegram bridge and the WhatsApp bridge. I think that might have been it. So our team, obviously led by Talir, just created a vast amount of different bridges. I think one of the really interesting ones we created was the Android SMS bridge, which runs a small daemon on your Android phone and relays messages to and from the phone to the SMS network. Other interesting one is the iMessage bridge, of course. iMessage is one of the hardest networks to interconnect with. Apple, does a good job at trying to make sure that no one else can connect to it. So we've built the ability for people on Beeper to send and receive iMessages. And we had to do that by building first a self-hosted option where you run the iMessage bridge inside the Beeper desktop app on a Mac. Or for people that do not have Macs, we enable them to use iMessage with one of our cloud Mac servers. So yeah, so a lot of the magic happens in the chat network setup page. Some of the cool things we do is we let you filter out messages from the inbox. So if you, for example, I like LinkedIn, but I don't necessarily want to see all of my LinkedIn messages in the inbox. So we have separate spaces where you can keep all of your messages for one particular network and actually not have them cross over into the main inbox. We call this, it's very similar to Element, the space bar. So you can see here that each network has its own space, and you can filter and sort messages just by that type. Most people, they prefer the unified inbox, seeing all their messages mixed together. And this is the unified inbox. You can see that this is a Telegram message. This is a WhatsApp message, Beeper message or Matrix message, Twitter, SMS, you name it, all goes into one inbox. We've also added in a what we call the command bar. So if you hit Command K, you can execute a bunch of different options. Most people use this for quick sorting, quick searching. So we've integrated this with Element's the encrypted client-side search. But you can also search for rooms or people and quickly switch between them. Lots of keyboard shortcuts that we've added. Being able to, just hit Command N or Command 1. You can, showing my keyboard shortcuts as I was using them, but you can use JK to sort between, to move among the room list. What else? We are experimenting with kind of new ways of managing your inbox, as I mentioned. So we built the ability to bookmark messages. We noticed that a lot of people leave rooms unread as kind of a to-do list. So one of the first things that we're experimenting with here is letting you mark individual messages as bookmarked, so that you can come back to them later, kind of like a to-do list. We're not 100% done here. I think there's a lot more work that we can do to help prioritize, but it's one of the first ideas. We're close to adding scheduled messages in so that you can set a message to be sent later. Just another common feature with a lot of other messaging apps that we're going to be adding into Beeper. And of course, this is just the desktop app. We also have a native iOS and Android version of Beeper as well.
So that's a cool demo, and I really like Beeper. You have everything tightly integrated. So you already started to answer that question, but to be a bit provocative, Beeper is not just a white label matrix or a white label element. It's a bit more than that. Do you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, we certainly have a perspective. I think, as I mentioned at the top, people can feel overwhelmed when they're using many different chat apps, and they can feel overwhelmed when they're using Beeper because we integrate with all of your different inboxes. So one of the most important things we can do is not just unify, but actually give you tools to manage your inbox and to to make you feel less overwhelmed as you're dealing with incoming messages. Um, oh, I forgot to mention one of the cool features that we added and actually have published an MSC for that's working its way through. That is being able to mark chats as unread, so that you can read a room and then mark it as unread, so that you can come back to it later if you're not ready to reply at that time.
It's interesting that you mentioned the MSC. That's one of the questions I had later for you, but I'm happy that you bring it. So you are developing things for Beeper, features that you thought were lacking on Matrix, and you developed MSCs. So for people who are relatively new to Matrix and to how the Matrix Foundation and specification work, when you think something can be added to Matrix and is lacking, you can write a proposal, which is a Matrix spec change. I think that's what MSC stands for. And it's a free-form document you can use to describe what you want to do and how you want to do it. And then you write an implementation, and it's going to be reviewed by the spec core team, so the guardians of the specification, who are in charge of making sure that you are not trying to make crazy things with the specification, but things that make sense. Obviously, marking as unread is something many people want, so yes, that MSC is more than welcome. So Beeper is contributing back to Matrix. You mentioned that you have several bridges. I know Tolir is somebody who's pretty active on the bridges side. Are the bridges open source?
Yeah, so all of our bridges that we do, they're all open source kind of across the board. And a lot of them predate, like, well, as Eric was mentioning, Talir's been working on bridges for many years, and some of them predate Beeper, but we wanted to kind of continue that trend. And so we wanted all of these networks to be supported in Beeper. And we also wanted to like make sure we're still working with the existing reverse engineering and bridge community that's out there. Like this was something that we didn't necessarily have to go out on our own, and instead we can kind of collaborate back and forth, and we are working with Element 2 on bridges as well. So the bridges some of the bridges focused in EMS1, that's actually a joint effort between the two of us, which is great to see. The other big reason that we want to open source them is really like bridging is a very sensitive thing when it comes to people's data. Like this is something that we take extremely seriously, and we do basically make every single chat in Beeper to be end-to-end encrypted. But unfortunately, that bridge is a bit of a weak point in there. That's the point where you have to trust us with your credential, and that we're interacting with the Matrix network and that other network out there. And just to show good faith, we do want to make sure that the community can take a look at exactly what we're using their credential for and exactly how we're interacting with their accounts and bringing all of that data into Matrix. So all of that stuff is open source. It's all in our GitLab. We accept pull requests, and we're also super happy to support other people using bridges on their own home servers as well.
All right, so you have a very polished applications where everything is tightly integrated. You have open source bridges that anyone can take and run on their own. Beeper is based on Matrix, so I think you are using Synapse or Dendrite or a Matrix home server that anybody can host. All of this has a cost. How is Beeper funded?
We are funded by, so I actually was a venture capitalist in my past life. So we're funded by some excellent venture capital firms, including Y Combinator, which is the company where I work for. I think almost the more interesting thing is the business model that we're pursuing. We have decided to build a company backed by payments from our users. So we sell a service, which is the chance to use the integrated, as you're saying, the integrated experience. We charge a monthly fee for that. And we think that aligns ourselves really well with our users' intent, by making it very clear that we sell a service in exchange for money. We do not need to see people's messages. We do not need to sell advertisements. We do not need to have any other form of making money. We just, make a good service, and in exchange, people pay us for that. I think that's kind of revolutionary in the messaging world. If you look at all of the other major chat apps like WhatsApp and even iMessage, it's kind of unclear how they make money. Most of them make money from giving away the chat service and making money in some other way. We want to be very clear to our users that our incentives are aligned with them. If we make a better service, if we make a better product, more people pay us money, and Beeper, becomes more successful. I think the way that I like to position Beeper in the context of the broader Matrix world is similar to how Gmail operates on top of the open standard that is email. Gmail is a closed sourced private application, but it's built on top of a public open network. I see Beeper in a very similar fashion. We're a private service that people pay money for, but it's built on top of the open Matrix network. And so if you have an account on Beeper, we federate with the entire Matrix universe, and you can continue to have conversations with people even if they are not on Beeper themselves.
All right, so you are not advertisers, you are not data brokers, you are just selling a service transparently, and you want people to be able to know what they are buying. You are charging a fee for that. Do you know if there is a demand for unified messaging?
I think we have shown that there is. We announced the product for the first time on Hacker News just about a year ago, and it went kind of crazy viral at the time. In the intervening year, we've actually had over 100,000 people sign up for Beeper. We haven't been able to invite everyone to start using it yet. It's still, just getting out of beta in the last few weeks, but we have a clear demand from over 100,000 people who want to use Beeper.
All right. I asked the question because I wanted to hear that answer, and I want other people to hear that answer. It's the European lawmakers who are working on the DMA. You might be familiar with their work. To make long story short for people listening to us, at the European level, the Matrix.org Foundation and Element are lobbying to get more interoperability. One of the concerns that the lawmakers have given us is that there is no strong demand. I think you are stressing enough that there is a high demand and that you are not able
absolutely.
You cannot even to answer to that demand yet. You will be eventually, but there is too many people asking for your service. I'm really happy to hear that, and I hope some other people are going to hear that. Are you into lobbying yourself, Eric, I think?
So we are, I think, trying very hard to explain the benefits of interoperability. In the past, we had interoperability. Email, as I mentioned, is an interoperable service. If you have an account on Gmail, you can still send a message to someone on Hotmail or Outlook. Not that crazy. It's not a revolutionary concept. But for some reason, over the last 13 years, since the advent of mobile, really, all of the chat networks have become these siloed, closed networks without interoperability. And we think that's kind of crazy. It doesn't make sense in a connected, world to have these siloed apps. So we have been working in the US and beginning to in Europe to explain the benefits to lawmakers and to decision makers. In the past, there have been changes. So many of you might not remember, but in the States at least, about 20 years ago, if you had a cell phone plan on one cell carrier, you could only send SMS messages to people who were also on that cell carrier. It was kind of crazy. But 20 years ago, lawmakers spoke and they changed the regulations and forced the carriers to allow for SMS interoperability. So there is past precedent in this case, where someone stepped in and said, actually, we need to enforce interoperability. So we are working on lobbying the U.S. Congress to make some laws that force large tech companies to allow for interoperability on their services. This would be great because right now on Beeper, if you use Beeper with Facebook or Instagram, you still need to have an account on those services, and Beeper works on your behalf to send and receive messages through that account. But you still need an account, which a lot of people don't want to do. They don't want to have an account on one of these services, but they still want to be able to message people who are on them. True interoperability would allow people to send messages to other users on other platforms without having an account on the platform.
I can see another benefit. Brad told us earlier when talking about bridges that the bridges have a weak spot when it comes to end-to-end encryption. With actual interoperability, we could have proper end-to-end encryption if we were all using an instant messaging protocol that is open and that allows end-to-end encryption already.
The problem
What
is
could
that
it
most
be?
other
Yeah.
the problem is that most other chat networks do not even support interoperability. Do not support encryption. So
Yeah.
of the 15 chat networks that Beeper supports, only 3 networks have end-to-end encryption. So I think the more important thing to do would be to move people to Matrix, which has native end-to-end encryption where users can control their own keys.
Definitely. And talking about interoperability, there is one messaging and one company which is very well known for not being interoperable, and it's Apple. In the demo, you showed that you supported bridging to iMessage, which is really crazy to me because it must be one of the most difficult bridges to run. And talking of crazy, a while ago when you announced Beeper, you had another crazy idea, which was to send jailbroken iPhones to people so you could bridge iMessage. What happened to you guys?
I even at the time I even tweeted out a photo of like dozens of iPhones that I had sitting on my desk. Well, the long story short is that it turns out it's harder to ship hardware to people all around the world. Who would have expected that coming from a bunch of people who ran a hardware company in the past? So we learned our lesson pretty quickly, and we realized that that was not a scalable way of enabling people to use iMessage. So in the last year, we've worked on a couple other ways to enable bridging to iMessage. Primary one is a pretty simple piece of code that runs on a user's own Mac computer and connects to iMessage that's running on the Mac and sends and receives iMessages in that fashion. We call that the self-hosted iMessage bridge. For people that do not have a Mac, we have a fleet of servers, Mac servers in the cloud. And for any user who wants, they can create, or any Beeper user who wants, they can create an account on one of these Mac servers and run the Mac bridge, the iMessage bridge there, which allows people to use iMessage, even if they have a Windows computer or an Android phone or a Linux computer or that kind of thing.
Right, and still in the Apple world, you told us earlier that Beeper is out of beta. Is all of Beeper out of beta?
Almost.
Almost.
So we posted on TWIM a couple weeks ago that Beeper is out of beta. I think I might have had a caveat there. The iOS app is almost out of beta. So over the last few months, we've been working on a rewrite of the user interface in our fork of Element. We've been switching over from UIKit to using SwiftUI as the UI engine. Took a little bit longer than we expected, but we think the result is quite good. We're working on getting the final parts of it, ported over to SwiftUI and working, and at that point, we'll publish it on the iOS App Store.
All right, I might be asking for a bit much, but do you have a public roadmap for Beeper, things you want to tease to people?
Not formally yet, but I can kind of share where we'll be going over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yes, please.
So up until now, we've been focused on reliability. Like the number one thing that a messenger has to do is be reliable. And there were a number of things that we had to work on here. Both the bridges had to be super reliable, but the clients also. We didn't want anyone to be. We wanted people who use Beeper to not have to deal with things like encryption or encryption keys or that kind of thing. So we had to smooth out all of the kind of edge cases related to bridges and related to using Beeper on your desktop and your mobile device. That took more time than we expected. But we're really pleased to say that we have achieved a level of reliability that we can stand behind, and Beeper is at the stage where you can switch over from your primary messenger to using Beeper and not have too many inconveniences as you're doing so. So that was kind of the first milestone. The next milestone that we're focused on is what I kind of outlined earlier. We think that people's messaging lives right now are not as simple as they could be. There's still a lot of noise. There's still a lot of clutter, low priority messages, inability to kind of prioritize notifications. And so over the next kind of the next phase for Beeper is figuring out what are ways that we can what are tools, what are systems that we can put into our apps that make it possible for users to prioritize their most important conversations and bring those to the top. Not everyone uses messaging in the same way. I think one of the interesting things that I've learned talking to hundreds of different Beeper users and other people in the Matrix community is that everyone has a slightly different setup. Like they'll have one messenger as their primary messenger. They'll have group chats on a different network. They will have work chats. They'll have personal chats. They'll have gaming chats. Nobody has really focused on building a user interface that lets people customize and prioritize chats. This has kind of happened in email. So if you look at various email clients over the last 10 years, you've seen, Google Inbox, Gmail, Superhuman, Spark email. There's many different attempts. There's many people who have kind of created different user interfaces and different imaginations of how an email inbox would look. But that's never happened for chat up until now. Like the interface has always been intrinsically linked to the underlying network that the messenger has. So for example, on WhatsApp, the network and the client are the same thing. There's no way to experiment with a different interface on top of the underlying WhatsApp network. And so for the first time with Beeper and Matrix, you can separate the network from the interface. And we are using that opportunity to imagine and to design and to test and to iterate through different UIs and different ways of prioritizing those messages. So I guess the long story short is we're still very much in a kind of creative ideation phase. I guess this ties into one of the asks we have for the community. As I mentioned, there's just many different ways that people use messaging. We're very excited to have conversations with people who have strong opinions on how they manage their inbox. If that is you, and you would like to kind of share your ideas and share your dreams for how the kind of best inbox layout would look for you, I'd love to chat. My Matrix ID is @Eric on beeper.com. You can send me a message, and I would love to kind of just do a Zoom or a video call and see how you use your messaging apps today, and tell you more about what we're working on with Beeper, and maybe some of the ideas that you have we could work on integrating into our interface.
All right, I'm going to leave a link to your profile in the description so people can reach out to you and send you messages if they are strongly opinionated on how.
Because I feel like we may have some people in the Matrix community who have strong opinions.
A few people who want an option just to do things like they want. So you mentioned that Beeper is based on Matrix. If I'm coming with my own Matrix account, can I talk to people who are on Beeper, or is Beeper's network exclusive to Beeper?
Super common feature request. We kind of refer to this internally as the Matrix bridge. So basically, I have my Beeper account and I have all my network, but how do I get all my Matrix accounts as well? We don't have that yet, but we are looking to do that. Instead, when you sign up for Beeper, you do get a net new MX ID. So we are fully federating with all the network. And as Eric was mentioning, his MX ID, mine is just Brad on the beeper.com home server. And the intent there is just to give people like a really easy way of getting into the Matrix community, especially if it's their first experience with using Matrix.
All right. And one thing I forgot to mention, Eric, when you were talking about the public roadmap, you are going to add new features to declutter the interface. Let me put my Matrix advocacy hat on. Are you going to open MSCs for that?
Brad could probably talk a little bit more about our strategy there.
Yeah, a lot of it depends. So like the approach that we've generally been taking is the great thing about the Matrix ecosystem is that it is all open source. Like we don't necessarily have to wait for a new release of Synapse. We actually have forked Synapse and we have added a bunch of new functionality and have tried out new things. The mark is unread feature that Eric mentioned earlier is just kind of an example of that, where we built that first internally and said like, hey, let's generalize this. Let's get this into the spec. And we've done that with a few other small things. So another one recently is that we've added support for push rules, which are how push notifications work in Matrix. We've allowed them to be customized based on messages that are related to each other. So the feature that we wanted is we wanted a reaction to one of my messages to mark the room as unread, but a reaction to someone else's message to not. And that's not something that the Matrix spec supported today, but that was like an experience that we wanted to build. So we tried it out, we experimented within our own product, and then since then, actually, we kind of got beaten to the punch. We shared our work with the community, and we actually had another member of the community actually write up that MSC for us, which is kind of funny. But that's kind of the approach that we generally want to take. We want to like imagine the user experience that we want to accomplish with Matrix, and then contribute it back once we got it working. And it's just an amazing way for us to not only contribute back to the community, but also to get like really expert feedback from the really smart people that are building the Matrix spec.
Right, and I see a pattern here, because you are not the only ones to try to build things in your products based on Matrix and then to upstream your changes. And it's an approach that really makes sense when you are building a product on top of Matrix. And it really makes sense to upstream the changes, not only because you get the feedback from people, maybe you can get people to write the MSC for you if they are really interested. But it also makes sense from a business perspective, because as you told, you had forked Synapse and then you upstream your changes. And maintaining a fork is something that is expensive, and you don't want to maintain a fork most of the time. So if your change is upstreamed, then it's upstream's problem in a way. So you get the feature
Absolutely.
sort of
Absolutely.
for free.
And like the Synapse team is brilliant and great to work with, and they are much better at modifying Synapse than we are. So we make the change, we try it out, we get it like 80% right, and then Eric or someone else on the Synapse team builds us out.
Perfect. I had another question about Beeper. If I'm buying a subscription to Beeper, so if I go to beeper.com once the 100,000 of people before me got their account, and I want to get a Beeper account, can I bring my own domain, or will I get a beeper.com account?
This goes back to like the Matrix bridge that we would like to provide at some point. Everyone signing up for Beeper, like we are selling Beeper as kind of this full vertically integrated solution. So coming in, you do get a new like username at the beeper.com MXID, and that is your primary Beeper account that you'll be using with all of your bridges. And then in the future, at some point, we'll allow you to bring any kind of existing ones today. But no, there is like one source of like Beeper and MD, and we are trying to build out that broad Beeper network as a way of bringing a lot of people into Matrix.
All right. I think we've covered all of my questions. Any final thoughts to conclude the episode?
One of the other things that we do that we want to do is participate in the bridge, the Matrix bridge kind of ecosystem. As Brad mentioned, we publish all of the changes to our bridges publicly for a variety of reasons that Brad mentioned. But we also want to support other developers that are building bridges. So if you are considering building a bridge, or you're interested in bridge building, we'd love to chat. In the past, we have commissioned open source bridges. So if you're interested in building a bridge for a particular network, we would love to pay you to do that and to actually build an open source bridge for for another network. We've done that for, I think, 5 or 6 networks so far. We'd love to keep that going. So if that might be you, feel free to send us a message. You name it, we'd love to see a bridge for it. Like the craziest bridges that we've heard of are, I think someone might be working on a Steam bridge. That was a pretty cool idea. I think we'll see a fax bridge at some point. I guarantee that like someday faxes are gonna, find their way into Beeper. But if you're interested in building a bridge, chat with us. We'd love to support you either through money, donate to support your bridge work, or we have some of the best bridge builders in the world who would love to chat and help you. We're also recruiting for a number of internal positions. We have a 100% remote team with 20 engineers around the world. A lot of the people on the Beeper team were members of the Matrix community who we met through things like This Week in Matrix. So if you are a backend developer or a front-end developer or an iOS developer or an Android developer and interested in working on anything that we outlined today, feel free to send us a message either through our website, or you could just send us a DM through Matrix. We'd love to chat. We have, I think, a really fun team of people who love building messaging apps. And so if that's something that you want to work on, send us a message.
Excellent. As for me, I'm really happy to see Beeper as a company being successful in its work based on Matrix. I'm really happy to see Beeper as a product, and I really insist on the product and not on the client part, because you really are adding something to the protocol. There is a real product vision that some things in the protocol, the Matrix protocol is very flexible. Some things the people, the end user, don't need to see, and you are hiding them on Beeper. I really like the design you have, the product vision, the fact that you are not expecting things from the user that cannot be expected. Like, not everybody wants to run their own bridge. So I really wish you the success you already have, and I hope it's going to continue this way. And looking forward to a richer Matrix world with you and your upstream first mentality, which is really great. Thanks a lot, and see you around Matrix Live.
Thank you.
Thank you.